On September 26, 1976, a Soviet fighter pilot by the name of Viktor Belenko landed his top-secret MiG-25 Foxbat aircraft on Japanese soil, defecting from the Soviet Union with the aircraft. This event is known as one of the most brazen acts of espionage in modern history. And when you look at the incredible story of how this all went down, it's easy to see why. It was on a normal day that Belenko was flying his MiG-25 over Japan, when suddenly he realized that he had an opportunity to defect to the other side. When he made that decision, he knew that he would have to get the plane down on the ground and land it safely, without any prior experience doing so. And he also knew that he didn't really know where he was going to land it. But after some quick thinking, he managed to land the plane safely and defect to the west. So what led up to this moment? And how did this guy manage to land a plane he had never flown before? Well, let's take a closer look at the incredible story of Viktor Belenko, the man who landed a plane he had never flown before. Viktor Belenko was born in 1937 in the Ukrainian city of Poltava. From an early age, he showed an interest in aviation, and by the time he was 14, he had already built his first aircraft. After graduating from the Borisovsk Military Aviation School in 1956, he joined the Soviet Air Defense Forces, where he served for the next 20 years. During his service, he flew a variety of aircraft, including the MiG-21 and the Su-15. He also served in the Far East, where he was responsible for monitoring and intercepting U.S. reconnaissance aircraft. It was during this time that he learned to fly the MiG-25 Foxbat. The MiG-25 was a supersonic jet fighter designed to intercept and destroy enemy bombers. It was one of the fastest and most advanced aircraft in the world at the time. In 1970, Belenko was selected to participate in a top-secret mission to intercept a U.S. SR-71 Blackbird, which was being used for reconnaissance missions over the Soviet Union. The SR-71 was the fastest and most advanced aircraft in the world at the time, and the Soviets were eager to get their hands on one. The plan was to intercept the Blackbird and force it to land in Soviet territory, where it could be examined by Soviet engineers. However, the mission was aborted when Belenko's MiG-25 suffered engine problems. Despite the setback, Belenko continued to fly the MiG-25, and he became one of the most experienced pilots of the aircraft. By 1976, Belenko was a major in the Soviet Air Defense Forces, and he was stationed at a base in Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia. His job was still to intercept and destroy enemy bombers, but he was growing increasingly disillusioned with the Soviet system. He had seen firsthand the brutality of the KGB, and he was aware of the poor working conditions and low pay for Soviet military personnel. He began to feel trapped, and he started to plan his escape. Belenko's chance came in September 1976 when he was ordered to intercept a U.S. RC-135 reconnaissance aircraft that was flying over the Sea of Japan. The RC-135 was a heavily modified Boeing C-135 Stratotanker that was used for electronic intelligence gathering. The Soviets considered it a spy plane, and they wanted to prevent it from gathering intelligence on their air defenses. Belenko took off in his MiG-25, and he quickly caught up to the RC-135. He closed in on the target, and he prepared to fire. But at the last moment, he decided to defect. Belenko knew that the RC-135 was heavily guarded. There was no way he could force it to land in Soviet territory. His only option was to defect to the Japanese. He turned his MiG-25 around, and he headed for Japan. The Japanese government had been expecting a Soviet defector, but they had no idea when it would happen. They had set up a task force to monitor the situation, but they were not prepared for Belchenko's arrival. As he approached Japanese airspace, he knew that he had only seconds to make his decision. If he waited too long, the Soviet military would realize that he was defecting, and they would send in other aircraft to intercept him. But Belchenko was not about to be deterred. He pushed the MiG-25 to its limits, and he raced towards Japan. As he crossed the border, he knew that he had made the right decision. He had risked his life and defected from the Soviet Union with one of their most advanced aircraft. As soon as the news of the defection broke, the U.S. government was on the phone with the Japanese government. They wanted to know if they could get their hands on the MiG-25. The Japanese government was hesitant at first, but eventually agreed to allow the U.S. to examine the aircraft. A team of experts from the U.S. Air Force arrived in Japan, and they began to examine the MiG-25. They were looking for any information they could find about the aircraft's capabilities and technology. Belenko also briefed them on the aircraft and the Soviet military. The Americans were amazed at what they had found. They had never seen a MiG-25 up close before, and they were eager to learn more. They wanted to know how the aircraft compared to their own and what it meant for the future of aviation. After the U.S. experts had finished examining the MiG-25, they returned it to the Japanese. The Japanese government then decided to put the aircraft on display at the 1977 Paris Air Show. This was a major coup for the Japanese. They had never exhibited a Soviet aircraft at an air show before, and they were eager to show it off. The MiG-25 was the star of the show, and it drew huge crowds of spectators. Belchenko also attended the air show, and he watched proudly as his old aircraft was put on display. Following the Paris Air Show, the Japanese government returned the MiG-25 to Belchenko, who then flew it back to the Soviet Union. Upon his return, he was stripped of his rank and his flight privileges, and he was placed under house arrest. The Soviets were furious about the defection, and they blamed Belchenko for bringing them shame. They tried to make an example of him, and they wanted to send a message to other potential defectors. But Belchenko was not deterred. He had risked his life to defect, and he was not about to be intimidated by the Soviets. He had seen enough of the Soviet system, and he was done with it. In 1978, Belchenko was charged with treason and espionage, and he was sentenced to 15 years in prison. But the sentence was later reduced to 8 years. He served his time in various prisons and labor camps across the Soviet Union. During his imprisonment, he was tortured and mistreated by the Soviets. They wanted him to confess to his crimes and to renounce his defection. But Belchenko refused. He was a true hero, and he was not about to back down. In 1985, Belchenko was released from prison and he was allowed to keep the money and possessions that he had stolen from the Soviets. He then moved to Japan, where he lived out the remainder of his days. Belchenko died in 2005 at the age of 68. He was a true hero, and his story will never be forgotten. We hope you enjoyed the story of Viktor Belenko, the man who landed a plane he had never flown before. If you did, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this. Thank you for watching.